What happens when we have stress is we have tension, and that tension can settle in your pelvic floor just like it can settle into your neck and shoulders. And so that prolonged tension can create pelvic floor issues like painful sex, tailbone pain, incomplete bladder emptying, straining for bowel movements, leakage and prolapse even.
I'm Anne-Marie McQueen, journalist and proud 50-ish woman, and we are here looking for the true truth in perimenopause, menopause, midlife, and beyond.
Opening our minds to other possibilities is not always easy.
Hot Flash Inc.
You're all woman to me. All right, Anne-Marie.
Hi there. Welcome to the Hot Flash Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Marie McQueen, founder of Hot Flash Inc., journalist, woman who's been through menopause. I am here today to talk about pelvic floor issues, which are common but not normal. So says pelvic floor physical therapist, Dr. Sara Reardon. We are talking about her forthcoming book, Floored, A Woman's Guide to Pelvic Floor Health at Every Age and Stage. It's coming out June 10th, just a few days after this podcast comes out. Dr. Sara has built a very robust community online as the Vagina Whisperer. She has 650,000 Instagram followers and 8 million TikTok views. Whew. She teaches women how to prevent as well as overcome pelvic floor issues at every stage of life with simple tips, practical advice. I've yet to speak to someone who is as comfortable talking about sexual things, and that's saying a lot because I've had 160 plus episodes of this podcast. Okay, Dr. Sara Reardon, thanks for joining us here on the Hot Flashing podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I was just telling you, it's been a while since we've talked about pelvic stuff here, and I was thinking, I want to find someone new. And then you came to me and you've got a book coming out. Is it coming out in June?
Yeah, it's coming out June 10th. So depending on when this airs, it may or may not be available. I am super excited. I really feel like there just aren't a lot of books out there or around pelvic health, if any, to be honest with you. And when we go to the bookstores and there's, hundreds of books on nutrition and yoga, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's nothing out here. And this group of muscles is working for us our entire lives, changes through every stage of life, and yet we're getting no education about it. So I'm really excited to share it with the world.
There's so many people that don't even know it's a thing or that it exists, right, or that people like you, like pelvic floor therapists, exist. Do you find that still, that people are surprised?
All the time. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of promotion for the book, which I've been really fortunate to do. And I think that the majority of people who have me on are either in the healthcare space, specifically for pregnancy or menopause, or they've had pelvic floor issues themselves. And so I think we often don't hear about the pelvic floor muscles or pelvic floor dysfunction or therapy until we have a problem. And I think to me, it's the equivalent of you never hear of a dentist until you have a cavity. And so it's like, why aren't we doing more proactive education and care and exercises to help prevent these issues? And then also getting women help sooner once they start popping up instead of waiting years or decades to give them some relief.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's just have a top line 101 on how the pelvic floor works.
Absolutely. And the way I arranged the book is like the very beginning of the book is all about what is the pelvic floor? Because as we mentioned, so many people don't know, even medical providers. Your pelvic floor is a group of muscles that sits at the bottom of your pelvis. So if we imagine those bones where we put our hands on our hips, that kind of ring of bones, at the very bottom of that is a hammock of muscles. And that's what we call your pelvic floor. It's literally the floor of your core. Those muscles support your uterus, your ovaries, your bladder, which holds urine, your balls, which hold stool in the female body. In the male body, you don't have a uterus or ovaries, but you have a prostate kind of resting inside of that basket. And then in the female body, there's 3 openings, one for the urethra for urine to exit, one for the anal opening for bowel movements, and then the vaginal opening for menstruation, vaginal birth, vaginal intercourse. In male bodies, there's only 2 openings, one for the urethra and one for the anal opening. So if there's ever any issues with bladder function like leakage or frequency or overactive bladder, or pooping issues like constipation, hemorrhoids, skid marks in your underwear, or anything with painful sex or anything like that, your pelvic floor is likely involved. And yet we don't think of muscles as a factor that could be contributing to problems down there.
And okay, this blew me away. How many muscles attach to your pelvic floor?
36. 36 muscles attached to your pelvis, and your pelvis is part of that.
36 muscles. So yeah, it's the center of your body. Like they're going all which ways?
Correct. And they're involved with breathing and core support and periods and menopause and all of these things. And yet we just don't talk about them. And so it like really fascinates me as a physical therapist. I'm a muscle specialist. And yet even in physical therapy, I feel like we just skip over these muscles. We go from like the hips to the knees and don't talk about the pelvic floor.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So what are the most common things we're doing and have done that are not helping us?
I think the first thing is not even realizing these muscles exist. And some of the common things I think we always like suck in our core. We're taught to pull in your belly button and flatten your stomach, and that actually can over tighten your pelvic floor muscles. And pelvic floor tension, it's similar to if you've got tension in your neck and your shoulders. You get tightness up there, it leads to like knots in your muscles and headaches and migraines. The same thing can happen in your pelvic floor. When you have tension down there, it can lead to a hard time starting your urine stream or emptying your bladder, straining with bowel movements, tailbone pain, hip pain, and then painful sex. So I would say the first thing is like feeling like you constantly are like pulling in down there and not relaxing. The other thing is how we pee. I think as women, and I'm a mom, we always want to be super efficient and fast. And so we push when we pee. And so what that means is like you're pushing, thinking that you need to get your pee out really fast when that really weakens your pelvic floor and can lead to leakage and prolapse. So instead, sit down, don't hover over the toilet, and then just lean forward and relax your pelvic floor muscles and breathe, and your bladder pushes the urine out for you. And then another thing is we're pooping wrong. I tell everybody to get a little squatty potty or a stool underneath their feet. And when you sit down to have a bowel movement, automatically put your feet on that, and it puts you like elevates your knees and puts you in a squatting position, and that relaxes your pelvic floor for bowel movements. So that's for every age, no matter where you are, you need to be using a stool under your feet, because straining with bowel movements is one of the contributing factors to pelvic floor weakness, more than running, jumping, crunches. So if you're doing that every day, you're weakening your pelvic floor unknowingly.
Wow. Okay. I'm in the Middle East and we sometimes have those toilets that are on the floor.
Yeah, and they're great for you.
Yeah, I skipped them, but I have had to use them before in a pinch. And I always think this is how we were meant to do it.
It is. And it's funny because for the book, I was researching, like, how did we end up on these porcelain thrones that we're sitting on now? And it's really with industrialization. It used to be a hole in the ground outside. Then it became, we had plumbing and heaters. So we moved toilets inside. And instead of it being a hole over the ground, it was a chair that you sat on with a hole underneath it. And then so we got into these sitting positions instead of squatting, which is our natural position to empty your bowels.
Yeah, we're always heading towards convenience, but sometimes away from what we were meant to do.
So we're like working backwards now, trying to put a stool under our feet to recreate that position.
In 10 years, people will have holes in their floor and they're like,
I know. It's like bidets are making a comeback. It's the same thing.
Oh, how about peeing in the shower? I've seen back and forth on that on social media. And I'm like, oh gosh, by the way, I'm 55, but this was like a funny joke when I was in my late 20s. Oh, he pees in the shower. No, he thinks it's disgusting. Like my friends and I, we would talk about it and debate it.
So I see this on social media all the time. And I think one of the myths is that peeing in the shower will give you pelvic floor problems. And that is not the case. Peeing in the shower is totally fine. It's convenient. It saves natural resources. However, running water can trigger the urge to urinate. So for you, if it triggers the urge to urinate and you feel like the urge is so strong, you're going to pee your pants or you can't make it to the bathroom in time, that's a sign of pelvic or dysfunction or overactive bladder. So it can more give you awareness that you might have a pelvic floor issue, but it's not going to cause a pelvic floor issue. So I'm like, pee away. It's fine.
Okay. So what about perimenopause? What kinds of things do we bring with us, first of all?
Hey you, yes you, the beautiful lady garden holder. When was the last time someone gave you the real talk about your vulva, your hormones, or what the hell is going on with your body after the age of 35? Or ever, really? Exactly. I'm Lady V, and I host High Tea with Lady V, the podcast where we get brutally honest about womanhood, from perimenopause and pelvic floor fails to periods, birthing, and everything in between. Nothing's off limits. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all the usual suspects.
So I think some of the first things is you have to be aware of what some of the pelvic floor signs are that you're even in perimenopause. I'm 42 and I feel so grateful I'm in this space because I wouldn't know what to look out for. And I would think, what is going on with my body? And now women are having babies later in life. More women are having babies in their 40s than in their teens. So we're going from postpartum to perimenopause in one blurry season. And we're like, where's my vagina and pelvic floor? What's happening? So some of the things to even look out for are more frequent urination. So you may feel like you have to pee several times before getting to bed, or you're waking at night to pee when you didn't have to before. More leakage. So maybe you used to be able to play tennis or run without leakage, and then now you feel like, oh my gosh, I feel like I could leak. Vaginal dryness. So you may feel like itching, irritation in the vulva and vagina. You may need to use lubricant with sex. You feel drier. And it's not that you're less aroused, it's that you have less lubrication because your hormones are changing. So starting to have to use a lubricant during intercourse. And then even the feeling of like pressure or heaviness in the vagina, like something's falling out or there's like rubbing in there. Those are all signs of pelvic floor weakness and tissue thinning. What happens during perimenopause is our estrogen levels gradually decline. And estrogen is a hormone that plumps up the vagina. It gives you nice lubrication and secretions. It gives you more tone and endurance to your pelvic floor muscles. And because that hormone is declining as we're in perimenopause, we start seeing some of these pelvic floor changes like bladder issues and sexual issues. So those are some early signs that like, oh, I didn't even realize this was related to perimenopause or that I was in it. So a couple things you can do are you need to proactively strengthen. I get reels every day about strength train for menopause and perimenopause and wear your weighted vest. But I'm like, you have to think about your pelvic floor too, because those muscles are weakening with menopause and perimenopause. So strengthening your pelvic floor proactively. And I go over this. There's a whole chapter in the book on menopause and perimenopause. Using vaginal moisturizers. There's a lot of ones that you can get specifically for the vulva. And I want you to use a specific one. I don't want you to put like Aquaphor down there. I think you need to use something that's going to be non-irritating and help maintain pH balance. Using a good lubricant during intercourse. Again, it doesn't mean you're not aroused. It just means that you're in perimenopause and you've got more dryness to the area.
Yeah, it's interesting because I thought for sure I won't have any of those problems because I didn't have kids. And I guess maybe like late 40s, I did a trampoline class like all the time religiously. Like it's really tough. And I just started feeling, oh, it just feels it's not secure down. It's just something else. There's a little bit of movement, like front to back, just like
Yep.
not in sync with my body. And that was shocking to me. I didn't know. I thought for sure I'm not going to have a single problem. I'd heard my friends talk for years about the things that they had. And I'm like, woof, they're going to have it, but I won't. And
I know it's interesting because being pregnant, giving birth, and going through menopause are three risk factors for developing pelvic floor issues. Anyone can develop them. You don't have to have babies or even have to be in menopause, but those are three times in our life that you are at risk for pelvic floor dysfunction. So to me, the fact that we know that 100% of women who are living long enough are going to go through menopause, and yet we're not preparing them for pelvic floor issues. Like, you don't have to wait for something to happen to start addressing it. And then you feel like you're swimming upstream. I'm like, perimenopause is really this runway, this kind of yellow flag that's waving, saying, hey, this is coming. Now's your chance. Like, it's never too late. Really start building up your strength that may, pee properly, poop properly, lift properly, breathe properly to get your pelvic floor in great shape for menopause and beyond.
So are Kegels part of your protocol that you talk about in your book?
Has your doctor told you that you're too young for perimenopause? You just don't feel like yourself? You are not alone. Perimenopause can start earlier than you think. That's why Menolabs is here, to support you with a range of products and the information you need to confidently speak up and get the care you deserve. They also offer science-backed products like their bestseller, MenoFit, a probiotic designed to help relieve symptoms like hot flashes and night sweats and more, all while supporting your overall health and wellness. Don't settle for less. Visit Menolabs and get the support you need today. Right now, they're offering our Hot Flash Inc. listeners 20% off using code HOTFLASH20 at menolabs.com. Now for the small print. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Yes and no. Kegels are typically the only exercise we hear about when we talk about the pelvic floor, but Kegels are pelvic floor muscle contraction. So that's for strengthening the pelvic floor. So many women actually have pelvic floor tension, and Kegels are the opposite of what they need. So if you have pelvic floor tension, and I go through this in the book, like how do you know if you need strengthening and do Kegels, and how do you know if you need relaxation, which is other exercises and massage and yoga and breathing. So you have to first discriminate between which type of muscle function you have and then address it. But the other thing with Kegels is that if you need strengthening, you can't just do Kegels like sitting at your desk or in the carpool lane. You need to use those muscles when you need it, which is in standing and walking, with lifting, with squatting, with jumping. You need the muscles to turn on when they have pressure or force, not just sitting. And I think we've been told to just, oh, do your Kegels, but one, you may not need them and it could make your problem worse. But two, you've got to really bring that contraction into other activities and workouts to get the benefit of it.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you about gadgets a little bit later, but we're in a gadget world, and the sale of gadgets in this area is that we hear that there's a famous person that says you can't just do Kegels without anything, then you're just like flapping. It's like doing weights without a weight. You're just flapping in the wind. And I wondered, where are you on that? Because there does seem something to me that's effective if you do need to about strengthening around something.
And I think it's individual. It totally depends. So gadgets are great. Are they absolutely necessary for everyone? No, not at all. Do they help some people either if they feel like they need something to squeeze around? They can look like one of the common ones is like an internal Kegel trainer. So it looks like a tampon and you insert it into the vagina and then you squeeze around it. And it can give you something to squeeze around, which can help some people if they're learning how to do pelvic floor or Kegel contractions. And it can actually show you how you're performing on like a screen on your phone or a computer. So I think it can be really helpful to visually see what this muscle is doing. So you need to contract it, but you also need to relax it. A lot of people don't relax well after their contractions. And then you can see how long you can hold it for and how many reps you can do. I think it's a great place to get started. Or if you just are a gadget person and you like love that feedback. But once you get the hang of it, again, the goal is to use it with exercise, to contract with exercise, with functional movements. So you're not going to insert the gadget every time you go to the gym. Like I want you to be able to go with the gym and like pre-contract your pelvic floor and exhale with every squat, every lunge, every deadlift, every workout you're doing to build resistance in the muscle. So it's a great place to start. You don't have to have it, but if you want to try it, I think it's totally fine.
And about seeing a pelvic floor therapist like yourself, is that required? I know it's not available to a lot of people. Like it's pricey and it's not available. So yeah, do you need to?
Not necessarily. I think the beautiful thing about medicine right now is that you have options, right? I think that we've been able to meet people where they are. So you're in Dubai. There may not be a lot of pelvic floor therapists in that area. I'm in New Orleans. There's a handful here, but they often have long wait lists. So you can have in-person therapy, which is great. I think nothing beats it, but also it's not always accessible or affordable. So you can do telehealth sessions. You can do home programs. Like I have a whole pelvic floor fitness platform that you can do at home. You take a quiz to tell you, do you need strengthening or lengthening? And then you can read my book. I think that these are really intimate issues. And I think we need to meet people where they are and give them options. And so sometimes even just helping someone understand their body better by reading the book or doing some home exercises on a program can really be enough to get them started and even to have success. But if you're doing those things and you haven't seen an in-person therapist and they're getting worse or not getting better, then I'm like, go ahead and check in with someone in person if it's available. So again, I think we need to give people options. Because the fact of the matter is there's billions of women and we don't have enough therapists to treat them all.
Where are you at and what have you observed with hormone therapy and the pelvic floor? Is there a connection? What is the connection?
There's totally a connection. And because the vagina and the vulva has estrogen receptors, when we see changes in estrogen in our body, our vagina, which is part of our pelvic floor, changes. And typically, again, as I mentioned, it gets weaker, it gets thinner, it gets drier. Estrogen is also a hormone that's responsible for creating a protein called collagen, which we talk about collagen all the time for our hair and our skin and our nails, but also for the pelvic floor and vagina. When we have a decrease in that collagen, we have less support. So to your point about we're getting into perimenopause and menopause, you have less collagen, you can feel that lack of support in your pelvic floor when you're jumping and you haven't done anything differently, right? I think that hormone therapy is definitely a little bit more nuanced than everybody needs it or nobody needs it. I feel like it's a very kind of binary view that a lot of medical providers have of they're totally against it, do nothing, or everybody needs to be on it. And I just don't think that's the case for everyone. So I am a fan of using topical estrogen on the vulva and vagina because then you can put these hormones really locally. Typically, it's you need something from a provider, a prescription to get this. Hopefully one day it's over the counter, but it's not yet. But you apply it every day for 2 weeks and then you use it twice a week forever. And you can actually start this in perimenopause. So I use it now because I'm like, I know my vulva and vagina is changing and I want to be on top of it and get that local estrogen. So it's a little bit of a more comfortable way for some people versus taking systemic hormones like a pill or a patch or a ring. Now, some people use testosterone, which can help with energy and muscle building. Some people can use progesterone, which can help with periods and premenstrual syndrome. So I think it's variable, but I think it's definitely individualized. And if you have a history of breast cancer or estrogen-driven cancers and you're like, listen, I'm just not comfortable with it, then I'm like, then don't do it. I don't think we should try to convince people that something's safe for them when in their gut, they don't feel like it is. And I'm like, this is what the research says, that there's little to no harm for you. But if it's something that in your gut doesn't feel right, then I want you to lean into that. Don't ignore that. So you can use, again, non-hormonal moisturizers. DHEA is a suppository you can put into the vagina. It's a precursor to estrogen. So there's a lot of options out there for people locally. And again, strengthen your pelvic floor. There's no hormones there.
Okay, you wrote about how stress was impacting your pelvic floor when you guys were caught in the hurricane. You had to relocate for a couple of weeks. How does that work?
So when we think about stress in our bodies, what happens? We tighten up and tense up, right? And so when we are in chronic, prolonged periods of stress, and this can happen, this is just like modern day life for me. I think for so many people, it's like we live in a stressful day and age where we are either commuting, we're on Zoom calls, we are navigating parenting or working an extraordinary amount of hours in non-traditional times. And we're navigating a lot of things, whether it be healthcare concerns, environmental concerns, like all of these things. And I think I know that our bodies keep the score. And what happens when we have stress is we have tension, and that tension can settle in your pelvic floor, just like it can settle into your neck and shoulders. And so that prolonged tension can create pelvic floor issues like painful sex, tailbone pain, incomplete bladder emptying, straining for bowel movements, leakage and prolapse even. So I think it's important when I work with people, when I work with my patients, and I go over this in the book, you can't just address the physical piece because the mental, emotional, psychological piece is such a driver for the physical. Like we know this. And I think you have to know that pelvic floor therapy is one piece of the puzzle, but I also encourage folks to do breathing, do yoga, do other things that quiet your nervous system that can help relax your muscles. So their new normal is not tense and tight. It's more relaxed and soft. And that's really important for people to understand because I'm like, you can do massage and stretches and dilators once a week. But if you live a really upregulated life and you're tense and stressed all the time, then like you're swimming upstream and you're going to feel like you can't get to where you want to be with your pelvic floor because it's so tight and tense.
And is there like a spiritual aspect? Because I feel there must be, because there's women walking around feeling like they have prolapse and just ignoring it. Like when it's not right here in the center of yourself, nothing is right. Nothing is right. So how does that translate for you?
I think that there hasn't been a lot of research or any research on that. So it's hard to say from a scientific perspective. For me personally, I think that everyone's journey is different. I tend to be a more spiritual person, not a religious person. And so I think that there's a little bit of like tuning in versus looking out that I do and that I try to do and that I encourage other people to do. I often think that we are just at a time where there is a fire hose of information coming at us, whether it's exercise, nutrition, drugs, parenting, healthcare, like everything. And sometimes I think our best times to find clarity and solutions are actually to like just turn it off. And what am I feeling? does something not feel right?
Yeah.
Why am I not addressing this? And is it because I don't know what's going on? Is it because I don't know who to talk to about it? So then you start investigating. But then I think that, or if you hear things and it's like it doesn't resonate with you, then it's probably not the right thing for you. So I think sometimes like tuning in to what is it we're experiencing versus looking out for solutions and handing that care over to somebody else is often where I feel like we lose touch with ourselves. So it's definitely a balance. Like I believe in Western medicine. I believe in healthcare. Like I gave birth in hospitals, but I also believe in Eastern medicine and there's a place for it and it's like centuries old and there's value to that. And I I had unmedicated births and I think there is a certain sense of spirituality and kind of going in that I had to do to navigate that pain, but it's per individual. And again, everybody's on their own journey. So it could be a piece of the puzzle for some and not for others.
You are the first person that mentioned lack of orgasms. And
Yeah.
I know I like, not to be TMI, but I've experienced muted orgasms or disappearing orgasms, which someone told me about 3 or 4 years ago, and I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know. How is this related to the pelvic floor?
People don't even know that orgasms are related to the pelvic floor. So we talk about this floor of muscles, but there's actually layers to that muscle. There's an outer layer and a deeper layer. The outer layer is made up of muscles that become the clitoris, which is purely a sex orgasm. I'm a sex organ. The clitoris is a gland that has over 10,000 nerve endings. It's solely for sexual pleasure. It doesn't do anything else except make us feel good. And the majority of women have orgasms with clitoral stimulation. Contrary to what we see in movies or wherever else on film, it's not with vaginal orgasms, it's with clitoral orgasms. And when we have weakness in our pelvic floor muscles, which again happens with aging, it happens postpartum, it happens with menopause, those orgasms can feel not as strong or even silent. I remember after I gave birth and I like worked with a vibrator and I tried to have my first orgasm and I was like, oh, it's like radio silence down there. I don't know what's happening. Like, is it not? And it's because my muscles were so weak.
Hey.
And we also, again, when we are aroused, we have lubrication to the area, we have blood flow to the area. So if you're not actively working these muscles and having regular sexual activity, it is a little bit of you're not going to be getting that same kind of engagement, arousal, muscle tension as we're used to. So I'm a huge fan of self-stimulation. I tell people like use a dildo, use a vibrator, use your hand, like watch film, like whatever is arousing to you to get blood flow to this area. Practice on yourself at home. It's hard to communicate with a partner if you have one, what feels good to you when you can't even discover it by yourself. And it changes at every course in our life. I think where we were as sexual beings in our 20s is very different than where we are in our 50s. And so it's okay for those things to change and transition. But I think that working on your pelvic floor, whether you can't have orgasms, they're weak orgasms or painful orgasms, or even leakage with orgasms, your pelvic floor is a component.
Okay. So, what are your parting words to someone who's listening that, oh, I got to do something? We have to do so many things in perimenopause and menopause.
I know.
Very overwhelming. So, where do you start?
First, I would say it's never too late. I think often I get the question of, I've been dealing with this for years, or I'm in my late 40s, or I'm in my 60s. Is it too late? And I'm like, it's never too late. It's like saying you have a cavity and, oh, just forget it. Let your teeth decay. I'm like, no, like it's never too late. The second thing is that you are not alone. There are hundreds and thousands, unfortunately, women who are also experiencing this. So as much kind of, I think, shame or embarrassment as we carry around this part of our body, you are not alone. I've been in this field for 18 years and worked with tens of thousands of women. And it's amazing to see the relief they can get. And lastly, start small. Like you don't have to overhaul your whole life. It could literally be like get your squatty potty and eat more fiber and drink water to have better poop so you don't weaken your pelvic floor. It could be stop pushing when you pee. It could be engaging your pelvic floor when you are doing your strength training workouts. I think it could be going for walks and wearing a weighted vest to build up muscle strength and doing your Kegel contractions while you're doing it. Yeah, I just think that half of our life is going to be in menopause, and perimenopause is this runway. And once we're given the tools on how to navigate it, it's just so much easier. We're not feeling lost and in the dark, but start small. But the biggest thing is you have to be consistent. We cannot do something once a month and expect success. We can't do it once and expect relief. You have to be consistent with it. I always come back to like dental care. I don't know why, but I'm like, we brush and floss our teeth every day, right? You have to do things and build it into your life to make it successful and good for your health long term. And I think it's easy for us to ignore this part of our body because people don't see it and we don't talk about it and we're not even educated about it, but it's really important.
Okay, so get connected and be consistent and then go from there. That's totally doable.
And get a squatty potty.
Get a squatty potty. Thank you so much. Good luck with your book launch. Thank you so much for taking the time to explain this. The
Thanks for
vagina
having me.
whisperer. What a great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that was great. I had a question.
Information received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem, i.e. menopause or anything else, or any healthcare questions, please promptly see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Anne-Marie McQueen and any producers or editors, disclaim any responsibility from any possible adverse effects from the use of any information contained herein. Opinions of guests on this podcast are their own, and the podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about a guest's qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. This podcast is owned by Hot Flash Inc. Media.